My name is Eliza, and I want to share a story that I've held inside for too long. It's a tale of confusion, boundaries, and the fragility of relationships we take for granted. I hope as you read this, you'll understand the choices I made. It began when I married Jack 5 years ago. Jack is a good man, loyal, hardworking, and always kind. He came into the marriage with a teenage son, Adam. At the time, Adam was 17, quiet, and still grappling with the loss of his mother. Adam lived with us because Jack worked long hours, and I became the person he spent the most time with. I tried to create a warm environment for him, cooking his favorite meals and asking about his day. At first, he was distant. "It was fine," he'd say when I asked about school, and then disappear into his room. Months passed, and gradually, Adam began to open up. He'd sit at the kitchen table while I cooked, sharing snippets about his classes or his friends. I was glad he felt comfortable with me, though our bond always felt delicate, like holding a butterfly that could fly away at any moment. One evening, Jack was away on a business trip. Adam and I had dinner together, and as I cleared the table, he said something that stopped me in my tracks. "You're really kind to me, Eliza," he said, his voice soft but steady. I smiled. "Of course, Adam. I care about you." He looked at me with an intensity I wasn't used to. "I mean it. You make this house feel like home." The warmth in his words touched me, but there was something about the way he said it, something in his gaze, that left me unsettled. After that night, Adam began spending more time around me. He'd sit closer on the couch when we watched TV or linger in the kitchen while I cooked. At first, I dismissed it as a teenager seeking attention, but as the days turned into weeks, his presence began to feel heavier, charged with an unspoken tension. One evening, I was in the garden trimming roses when Adam approached me. He stood close, too close, and his eyes held that same intensity from before. "Can I help?" he asked. I nodded, handing him the clippers. As we worked side by side, he suddenly said, "You're amazing, you know that." I laughed nervously. "They're just roses, Adam." "No," he said, his voice firm. "Not just that. You're amazing in every way." My heart skipped a beat. I looked at him, unsure how to respond. "Thank you," I said carefully. "That means a lot." That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about Adam's words. Was I imagining things? Reading too much into his kindness? I told myself it was nothing, that he was just a young man searching for connection. But then, something happened that I couldn't ignore. Jack was working late again, and I was in the living room reading a book. Adam came in and sat beside me, closer than usual. He asked about the book, and we ended up laughing about some of the characters. For a moment, it felt light and normal. But then, Adam placed his hand on mine. I froze. "Eliza," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just want to thank you. You've been so good to me." I pulled my hand away gently, my heart racing. "You don't need to thank me, Adam. We're family." He looked at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't name. "I know," he said, "but you're more than that to me." That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the moment over and over, wondering where I had gone wrong. Was it something I'd said? Something I'd done? The boundary between us had blurred, and I didn't know how to fix it. In the days that followed, I tried to act normal. I avoided being alone with Adam, hoping the distance would help. But he kept finding ways to be near me, helping with chores, sitting at the kitchen table while I cooked, or lingering in the garden while I worked. One afternoon, as I folded laundry, Adam came into the room. He stood in the doorway, watching me. "You do so much for us," he said. "For Dad, for me. I don't know how you do it." I forced a smile. "It's what families do, Adam." He stepped closer. "But it's more than that. You make everything better." I felt my cheeks flush. "That's sweet of you to say, but I'm just doing my part." That evening, Jack was home, and I felt a sense of relief. We had dinner together, and for the first time in weeks, I felt safe. But even then, I could feel Adam's eyes on me, watching, waiting. After dinner, Jack went to his study to catch up on work. I stayed in the kitchen, washing dishes. Adam came in and stood by the counter. "Eliza," he said softly, "can we talk?" I shook my head. "Not now, Adam. Go to bed." But he didn't move. Instead, he stepped closer. "I'm sorry if I've made you uncomfortable. I don't know how to stop feeling this way." My heart ached for him, but I knew I couldn't let this continue. "Adam, listen to me," I said firmly. "This isn't right. You're a wonderful young man, and you have so much ahead of you, but this has to stop." He nodded, his eyes filled with regret. "I'm sorry," he said. "I just needed to tell you how I feel." That night, I locked my bedroom door. As I lay in bed, I thought about Jack, about Adam, about the fragile threads that held our family together. I didn't want to break those threads, but I didn't know how to move forward. In the morning, I made a decision. After breakfast, I asked Jack to sit with me in the living room. "There's something we need to talk about," I said, my voice trembling. Jack looked at me, his brow furrowed with concern. "What is it, Eliza?" I took a deep breath and told him everything. I told him about Adam's behavior, his words, and the moments that had left me confused and unsettled. I didn't blame Adam, but I didn't hide the truth either. Jack listened quietly, his expression shifting from confusion to anger to sadness. When I finished, he sat back and rubbed his face with his hands. "I can't believe this," he said softly. "My son—" "I'm sorry," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you." Jack reached out and took my hand. "You did the right thing by telling me," he said. "We'll handle this together." That evening, Jack sat down with Adam. I stayed in the kitchen, my heart pounding as their voices drifted through the house. I couldn't hear the words, but I could feel the weight of the conversation. When Jack came back to the kitchen, he looked exhausted but calm. "We talked," he said. "Adam understands what he did was wrong. He's going to stay with his aunt for a while. It'll give us all some space." I nodded, relief washing over me. "Do you think he'll be okay?" "He's young," Jack said. "He'll learn and move on. And so will we." That night, as Jack and I sat together on the couch, he took my hand in his. "We'll get through this," he said. "Together." I looked at him, tears in my eyes, and nodded. "Yes," I whispered. "Together." And in that moment, I knew we had taken the first step toward healing, toward finding our way back to the family we were meant to be.